Hi, I'm Jami Shapiro, and welcome to Grandma Has ADHD. I'm a certified senior move manager and owner of Silver Linings Transitions, where I help people navigate life's big transitions. But here's the thing, I spent years helping families move through change while completely missing the pattern that was running through my own life. I'm the daughter of two ADHD parents, the mother of three ADHD children, and yep, I have ADHD too. For years, I didn't have the language or understanding for what that meant. But becoming an ADHD coach and specialist, that's been absolutely game changing. Not just for how I work with my clients, but for how I relate to my family and honestly, for how I understand myself. I even wrote a book about it called This Explains So Much. This podcast is for all of us who are discovering ADHD later in life. Each week, I bring you conversations with industry experts and people sharing their own ADHD journeys, real stories, real strategies, and often a little too much information. If you're loving what you're hearing, please share this podcast, leave us a review, and find me at jamishapiro.me. That's JamiShapiro.me. Whether you're over 50 and just getting diagnosed, or you're recognizing patterns you've lived with your whole life, this is your space to navigate ADHD with others who get it. So grab your coffee and get comfortable and let's dive in. Hey, here's a quick heads up before we dive in. You may hear me mention the Sparkler Society in this episode. Talking about it's happening right now. And here's the truth. My ADHD brain got so excited about this community that I may have jumped a little bit enthusiastically, a lot enthusiastically, before everything was actually ready. Classic ADHD move, right? We know what that's like. So here's what's actually happening. We've hit pause to make sure the Sparkler Society launches the right way, because this is going to change lives, and I want it to be everything you deserve from day one. We're officially launching in July of 2026, and here's what you can look forward to. Live group sessions every week, including support around decluttering and downsizing, body doubling, and ADHD group coaching. We are also addressing some of the big challenges of ADHD, worrying, overspending, and starting crafts only to lose steam. Membership in the Sparkler Society is going to save you from paying the ADHD tax. We're talking real dollars back in your pocket. And most importantly, we are building a community of women who want to get their shit together. Here's the exciting part. We're starting a wait list right now at jamishapiro.me. That's JamiShapiro.me. And the VIPs who join early will get free access to shape the community before we officially launch in July. You'll help us build this thing together. So if you hear me talking about the Sparkler Society, it's happening tomorrow, just know it's coming in July, and it's going to be worth the wait. Let's get to today's episode. Hello, and welcome to Grandma Has ADHD. This is the first two-part episode that I have ever done. And I did it because the interview was running long in episode 1, but I definitely feel like before you listen to episode 2, you need to go back and listen to episode 1, which will be the week before, released the week before. And also want to share a little bit about why I did it this way. I did it because we were starting to have technical difficulties and not knowing the production quality, which has been a source of issues. And one of the things, by the way, Lynn, I want to do is get, the better microphone and the better everything, the better camera. But my motto through this podcast is doing it on easy and not hard, because perfect is the enemy of done. And if I waited to get it all perfect, it would have stopped me from doing it. And I also wanted people to know, if I have the courage to go out there, warts and all, and show who I am, then it helps people to live more authentically. So I'm going to admit that I'm not crazy about the production quality. I definitely want to grow up to be a big girl and have a big girl podcast. But here we are. And also the conversation ran long, and it was too important of a conversation to try to even clip it to an hour. So I told Lynn, I'll figure out how to fix it, because I don't even know how the end of it's going to sound. I'm going to go back and listen and just say, hey, come join us for part 2. But anyway, where we left things, and this is what we decided we would go back to, is Lynn was sharing her own story of the late life understanding of ADHD, because we were inspired by Kim Holderness, who is a very public figure in the ADHD world, not because we thought she had ADHD, but because her very famous husband, Penn Holderness, has ADHD, writes jingles about it. They've written a book together. And at 49, she finally realized that underlying her anxiety all of her life and some of the perfectionism was undiagnosed ADHD, which has now been diagnosed. So Lynn said, we really need to do an episode. I really haven't shared the impact of ADHD on my life. And so we went back to age 5. And now we are around 8 or 9 with Lynn, talking about how she has now moved to Jacksonville, Florida, and has found the game-changing therapist. So with that said, Lynn, I asked you who that therapist was, because I moved to Jacksonville from Fort Lauderdale, actually Miami, the year after you moved, and also is in therapy. So I can't wait to hear what your therapist's name was, to see if it rings a bell.
Man, it's so crazy. We were always like next to each other. Isn't that crazy?
Can I say something? Wait, I got to say something really California woo-woo, okay?
Okay.
I 100% believe that I was put on earth at this time to spread this message. If I hadn't gone through everything that I had gone through, because remember, I didn't start off my business, Silver Linings Transitions, knowing that I even had ADHD. I came to ADHD, put it on the shelf because I'm starting a business, raising 3 children, going through a divorce. By the way, I graduated college with high honors, so I have ADHD. So what? Who cares? Next. But when I realized that my mom and all of these, not all, but a lot of the clients that I have worked with through the years who struggled the same way my mother struggled, I saw a lot of clutter and a lot of similar family dynamic patterns. And when I realized my mom had ADHD just over 2 years ago, I was like, ding, ding, ding. My mom is one of many in her generation who were not diagnosed and are probably going to finally discover what it's been their whole lives. And so my special interest has been older adults. I group 50 and over to older adults. But really, I group 50 and over into older adults, because we've gone our entire lives struggling to get by and not having the words for it. And, all of these kids are all over TikTok, and everybody's talking about how to parent children with ADHD, but nobody's talking about how to be middle-aged and beyond with ADHD, and how to support an ADHD parent when we are now caught between having ADHD, having children with ADHD because it's highly heritable, and now parenting with ADHD. So back to the woo-woo thing. I truly believe that I was put on earth to do this. And coincidentally, you and I have always wanted to work together, and we were drawn to each other. And we've always said, and we tried other things before, Lynn. So this isn't our first rodeo, but it's the first one that's stuck. And coincidentally, you happen to have the strengths that I lack. So
Well,
here we are.
It doesn't hurt that, as my husband calls it, I was paid off, not laid off. That my last company was sold, and I found out my company was being sold at 9:00. I received a call from Jami at 10:30, and she said, "Are you available?" I said, "I just became really available."
So maybe you and I were put onto the path that we were for this reason together. So there's my woo-woo.
All right. Well, I believe the same as you that nothing should be forced, and I also believe there are coincidences, and then there are just like you say, woo woo moments, right? So you and I are following each other to Jacksonville. We're both weirdly in therapy, which, in the 70s, I don't know that I had a lot of friends. I was the only one that I'm aware of. Maybe people weren't talking about it, but I was very open talking about it. And so the name of the therapist in Jacksonville, drum roll, and shout out to her because I still love her to this day, Dr. Acosta Rua.
Hmm. I don't know. The name sounds familiar, but I don't know why. I'll have to
And the name always stuck with me. Like I said, these other therapists, I couldn't tell you their name. And I know that we went and we looked at a couple of other therapists before we landed on her, but she was the one that we stayed with, probably from like 4th grade up until 7th grade. Now, keep in mind, now you got the teen years coming, and you and I also talk a lot about hormones and changes and, like what menopause is doing to our ADHD. But just imagine that you've got this 4th grader who is not even diagnosed with ADHD. I mean, think about it. Like my son was diagnosed with ADHD like by the 2nd grade. But now here I am in the 4th grade and nobody can really quite explain where this is all coming from and if it's about the white van's in Fort Lauderdale. Like, why am I still having these night terrors when I'm in a completely different city, but the creativity is still there. The house gets a bit scarier, I'll have to say. My parents moved to a two-story house. So now, if I want to entertain my parents or keep them awake, I've got to sneak down the stairs. You know what I mean? I mean, they were putting me to bed upstairs and that felt scarier to me, and the whole idea of, like, not being able to, be in a smaller house and control the environment and having all those windows in the house. I mean, you've been to my old house.
Mhm.
Um, it's kind of a scary house. It actually kinda reminds you of Annabelle Horror, to be honest, and also a lot of horror films are coming out, so it's just kind of like all this is happening, but I finally have a good therapist, and that therapist, did use the journaling, did use the, rewards. The rewards got a little bit more into fashion. So, if I wanted some nice jeans, I
Mm.
could get some rewards that way. But what was really, I think, interesting is the pattern of my parents still doubling down on trying to exhaust me continued. So I was still in 5 sports, um, even when we moved to Jacksonville. So I had picked up softball. I was in soccer, softball, dance, ice skating, and tennis. And some of those days I was playing 3 or 4 sports. The other thing you have to remember is cable is now invented. So the concept of giving me a TV at night and the concept of, Dr. Costarua put together that, she's not allowed to roam all over the house. The her patrolling the house is not gonna be a thing anymore.
Mhm.
Um, you're gonna put a little tape. And if she crosses that tape, thank God they didn't have like monitoring systems, but it was like if she crosses that tape, if she sits on that tape, like she may sit in the doorway on that tape and be talking out loud trying to keep everyone in the house up. You are to ignore her while she sits on that tape. She is going to come to the realization that all the creative anxiety that she has in her mind is not going to actually is not realistic, is not going to actually happen. So they kind of shrunk my world, put some parameters and structure, which again, when you think about it, like structure and putting parameters and structure and time boxing, and this is what we're going to do week 1 is we're going to put the tape and she's not going to get past that tape. Now, I cheated a lot. I got creative. I did things with, I moved past the tape, when I would hear them come out, I would jump to the other side of the tape, and I was still playing a little bit of a game with my sister, because her room connected to my room through a bathroom. But the house is twice as scary. But I do now have a therapist that understands structure. So I do get better. Now, cable gets invented. My dad wins a huge sales spiff. He was winning sales things all the time where we would get new electronics. Like we had the first Betamax
Mhm.
player. We had the first microwave. We're getting all of this technology, which kind of makes me wonder if that's maybe where I started like loving some like learning new things because nobody else in the house could understand the microwave or those things, and I would go and try to understand the microwave. So they gave me a little TV in my room, but let's think about what was on cable in the middle of the night when I was at my most vulnerable. Twilight Zone. like Twilight Zone.
You know what?
And
Can I
then
tell you? I was
yeah,
smart enough not to watch those movies. I would be at the slumber parties and everybody would be watching the movie, and I would be literally, and I'm not exaggerating, sitting next to the television so I didn't have to see it. Just watching their faces because I didn't want to like not be at the party, but I also knew that if I saw it, it was going to take me down.
yeah, yeah. And 7th grade, and I guess I should also mention that this whole entire time, I am a C student. And my teachers are telling my mom that I should be an A student. But again, I can't focus. I'm half tired. My projects, I'm always waiting to the last minute, or I'm losing them 2 or 3 times and having to redo them over and over and over again. So, my mom's just constantly hearing how I'm not reaching my
Your potential.
potential.
Mhm.
Yeah. And they have this new thing, you talked about referrals. Well, in the 7th grade, we had referrals, we had after school detention, which I was in quite a bit, and swatting. So I got hit with a paddle at school. Like without my parents' permission, I got hit with a paddle at school for passing notes and distracting people in the class. So I was definitely that person that, after a while, my mom was like, tell me something I don't know. And again, being a confident person, she was like, my child's awesome. There's nothing wrong with her. She's just awesome, and you just can't handle her awesomeness. So,
I
so
love
I
that.
do love that my mom never said, okay, we need to throw this, she's a disappointment to us all. Instead, it was like we're working with what we've got.
Go
Um,
Janet. Go Janet.
Go mom, go mom. Of
I do
course,
want to I want to
yeah,
put one other plug in. I do think your mom might have had ADHD, but one of my favorite Janet stories is when she was on her deathbed. And well, she wasn't on her deathbed. She was recovering from like a heart surgery, and I think she maybe knew that death might happen. Or you've talked about that, but you share the story because I just think it's a we have to squirrel for a moment and share the Janet story.
yeah. So my mom had a quadruple bypass, open heart surgery, and she was in some weird way. I guess she was tired or not motivated to fight, to get up to get that new heart activated, and so she said to me, just in case, let's come up with a funny tombstone just in case this just doesn't go my way. And we did come up with Funny's tombstone. I guess I'm allowed to say it. It does come up on iFunny and Reddit, and you can Google it anytime you want.
Wait,
It,
I love the story of how Sean, your son, comes to you and said, "I just saw what Mimi, what did they call your mom?
Moo Moo.
Moo Moo. I just saw Moo Moo's um uh tombstone, on social media." So
Yeah. My mom out of the gate with the tombstone. She got like 500,000 likes. Like I don't even think I've gotten 500,000 likes. My mom's tombstone has, but it says, if you're reading this, you're standing on my boobs. And how it got how it went viral is I did not take a picture. I'm kind of like, do you take pictures of tombstones? Like, I didn't take the picture, but I did agree to execute my mom's wishes. And the funeral home was like, "Are you sure?" And everybody said, "Are you sure?" And we said, "Yes." It is right by the Tournament Players Championship in Ponte Vedra, Florida. And some guy found it, and he took a picture and posted it online. And then it just kind of went viral from there. All right, you're about to hear my dog bark because the mailman just showed up. So if you hear dog barking in the back. So yeah. And my son, had just gotten a phone and he said, "Look, there's Moo Moo." And he commented back, "That is my grandmother." And someone said, "Oh, we think it's fake. We think the tombstone is fake, that it's a PDF or it's, been altered in some way." And he said, "No, that's my grandma and she's funny."
Aw.
I know. Well, I love my mom. I love my mom. I think she did everything she could possibly do with what was available at the time. And you know, and so, she was trying. She was
Right.
trying. Now, you and I talk a lot about our moms, and sometimes we can sound like our moms. Well, I knew that my son had I knew that I had something similar with my son because I heard my mom's voice coming out of me to my own children. And I remember just being so angry at my son because once again, we were heading to soccer and we had one blue sock and one black sock. We never had two matching soccer socks because he would lose them, even though I tried to like lay them out or do whatever. And I got so mad at him. I was like, you'd lose your head if it wasn't attached to your body. Well, if you can imagine, I'm playing 5 activities, and my mom would pick me up and she would have one uniform in the front seat, one uniform in the back seat, one in the middle, and one in the other. And we had a blanket that I changed my clothes underneath while we were in transit to the next activity. We didn't even stop at a bathroom. I just changed in the car. But then every year at the end of the year, when it came to the dance recital, where I was in like 10 different dances and had like wardrobe changes, I would be on the way to the stage and I would lose things on the way. And you would see me come out. And then afterwards, you would notice that I was the one dancer on stage that just had one silver glove or one sparkle or one thing missing or one thing. I didn't have a feather. And my mom said she could always spot me among the dancers, even all the brunettes, because I was always the one with missing outfits.
Okay, I
So,
have a question. Have you ever gone searching for something that was in your hand?
oh, you know what I was scared of? This was my scare. This was my worry, that when I had Corey, my second child, that I was gonna leave him on top of the car. Were you ever concerned about that? That I was gonna get my first child in the car, and then I was just gonna, like, leave Corey? I don't know, but I was always like, "Do I have my second child? Like, does my second child" like, because he was so quiet at first that I was like, "Oh my gosh," and Sean was talking, so he would always get my attention, and I was like, "Oh my god, I'm gonna leave my child somewhere."
So I'm too short to have lifted any kind of carrier onto the top of my car. So that was never my worry. But I did miss, parent teacher conferences. And as I've shared before, when I had young children, going to my husband and saying, I can't seem to get it together. I've got friends who doing the gold stars and their kids have consistent chores and I just can't seem to do it. So no, that was not one of my fears, but no judgment, I promise, because no judgment. I do want to go back to, like I said, the whole impetus, well, not the whole impetus, but why we decided to record this now is that, Kim Holderness, 49 years old, going through menopause, perimenopause, just diagnosed. It's all over social media. It's in the Atlantic. That this ADHD thing is a thing. It's not just the little boys. All of us who thought it couldn't be us because we had that negative stigma of the little boy who was hyperactive, who was always in trouble, who maybe didn't have friends. That's not me.
No,
Um,
that's not me and either. I mean, obviously,
That's what I mean. That's what we're all saying. That's not me. Even those
yeah.
of us women who had the hyperactivity, because I also have the hyperactivity. I was also like talking a mile a minute, really fast talker. I also would finish my work and that would disrupt everybody because God forbid I sit still like that, and just do nothing. That doesn't it feel painful?
I can sit still, but I have a lot of interests in things going on in my head. I am, I as I'm trying to get better. That's what I just keep saying is, in the 7th grade, I think the structure and the things that were some of the tools that were offered to me are very similar to what we're talking about, the tools that you've discovered, that you've talked about in your book. Um, those are the tools that were starting to be applied, and the conversation did we didn't talk about anxiety that was keeping me awake at night. We didn't talk like when I would talk with my therapist, she didn't give me like a label of anxiety. She didn't give me a label at all. She didn't give me anything. She gave me structure and tools. And medication was not even a thing. Now,
Mm-mm.
I don't want to stay in it too long, but I did slowly. I would get 1 hour sleep a night. And I think I'm also you gotta keep in mind, my hormones are changing, my body is changing. As you grow and you're growing, you get tired. And I am playing some sports, like I'm playing some sports that are physically really taking a lot out of me. Plus, my schoolwork is mentally taking a lot out of me. So it's almost like I couldn't fight the night anymore. The
Mm.
night eventually took over. But what's also interesting is as the night would take over and I would get those little wins of, I would wake up in the morning and find myself in my own bed and I was okay. Um, the therapist would be like, that's a win, like, how'd that feel? And she would always talk about, like, how'd that feel? Like, don't you feel like you feel better? You feel well rested. You now are able to do all the creative things that you want to do. You don't need, look at those 2 hours. Now you can be a better ice skater. Now you can be a better this, you can be a better that. And so it was all those little celebrations that somewhere around the 8th grade, she was like, we have so many wins. I don't need to see her as much. She knows
Wow.
how to win. She knows how to win. She knows how to pull it together. We're not going to solve everything. She's not going to be like everybody else. Um, I had friends. I know I was a lot. But I surrounded myself with friends that were also a lot. So,
Mm.
and I still do to this day, and I'm always looking for more friends to gather that are a lot. So I'm so excited about the conference we're going to because I feel like I've got some friends out there I haven't met yet that I'm going to meet at this neurodivergent conference in Austin coming up in March. So I'm very excited. But and my mom was very concerned with she wasn't as concerned about my academics as much as some parents might have been because she was just like whatever. My mom was always concerned about my social well-being and making sure that I had friends and close relationships. She was never she was concerned about boys because I was very boy crazy,
Me
but
too.
because I was so boy crazy, and because she knew I had a short attention span, whatever it was called, she figured I wasn't going to get in too much trouble because I'd get tired of a boy after 2 or 3 weeks. I wasn't one that would really date somebody for a lot of years and get into like a big relationship. So,
So I want to ask you a question because I've learned another thing, and I want to test it
okay.
on you. So I have heard that when we have ADHD, we tend to like obsess or ruminate about a person, and we'll like pursue them and chase them. It's like the thrill of the hunt, and then as soon as we've conquered it, we're like, nah. So that's why, and it was always for me that anybody that I really liked, as soon as they liked me back, I'm like, no. And I see that actually with my youngest child. We've gone through that, and I didn't understand at the time that that might be impacted by the ADHD. Would you say that was a same the same for you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the beginning of the year, my girlfriends and I, we would bet nail polish on who all we were going to date by the end of the year. And I would have at least 5 people on my list. Like, not just one, like 5 people. Like, by the end of this year, I don't just want to date this person, but like this person's cute and this person's cute and that person's cute. And so I want 5 nail polishes and I want to date all 5 of them.
So I want to ask you another question. I had another guest who's going to be coming on at a subsequent episode, that said that she was bullied really badly, bullied at school, felt out of place at home, and that impacted her grades. Because she didn't have her place. She didn't feel good. And she said she did a study in that, it turns out a lot of people with ADHD, like a very high percentage, had bullying experience. It sounds like you
Oh,
didn't have that.
oh, no, no. Oh, no, no. One of the things about being a lot and
Mm.
being in a lot of sports and being loud, and I would say I was probably more of my authentic self back then because I was very loud. I think at 50 years old, I've been beaten back a little bit by HR departments in corporate America to kind of rein it in, which I'm starting to take those chains off because I don't care anymore, right? But in the 7th and 8th and ninth grade, I'd say through most of high school, I was Lynn at 100%, which meant there you either loved me or you really, really hated me.
I was
And there was yeah, yeah.
exactly the same way. So my very best friends, for the most part, have remained my very best friends because they've figured out we like her, we can tolerate her. But it's been hard for me to know that I'm not for everybody. And there's this, we have that strong rejection sensitivity. And if somebody doesn't like me, then I almost will bend over backwards because my feelings are so hurt that they don't like me, that I will dwell there rather than focusing on who does like me, which I noticed, and I mentioned this in my book with my oldest child, would focus on the kids that didn't like them in school, rather than having the friends that did. And so Will always struggled socially, for that reason.
Yeah, well, this particular group of girls um, would decide when they wanted to attack me at school. And it always seemed like at the end of the year, they had had enough of hearing about me, like hearing about me over the intercom that like, oh, Lynn won the state tennis tournament, and Lynn is a soccerette, and Lynn's going to be performing at this and that. They just got tired of hearing my name, and they just wanted to beat me down to be like, stop. We don't want to hear your name anymore. And so 4 of them would push me into the lockers
Mm.
and just try to beat me up, but I was pretty athletic, and I decided, I'm going to take out the leader because she got me on a bad day. I think I was PMSing. And I did one of those Ralphies. Like, I mean, I wasn't upset. I was just on it. I was very hyper focused on hurting her face. And after that, people were a little less likely to jump me. But I will say that had social media been around, oh my gosh, I think they would have destroyed me. I think that they would have had a field day with me. And I think that would have gotten to me. The words probably would have gotten to me. I think people silently voted when they didn't like me. They just kind of silently voted. Um, but those were the people I didn't invite to my keg parties either. So, I understand why they probably didn't like me. But, but
Interesting, 'cause I went to my high school reunion and they were passing out the flyers of all the parties that people would go, "We're gonna meet at this place," right? But it wasn't posted all over social media. So I didn't know that I wasn't getting involved. But when I had a child that was seeing it all over social media and seeing the things that they weren't being invited to, it was crushing. Um, and so I wanted to to say that. So we are so lucky. But I also think that when you are too much, and I hate to use the word too much because we were made exactly to be who we are. And, that's what the Sparkler Society is going to be about, is going to be being exactly who you are, showing up exactly who you are, not dimming your light, but we grew up with that. And I share it in my book too, like be Jami light, tone it down, take it down a notch, right? Like that's the messaging. And so for a lot of people, that intensity in a friendship was too much. And
Yeah.
so I think that was also the reason that I lost some friends. And then throw in a little bit of if I have something to say, like that's where my impulse control became an issue, because if I had something to say, it was too painful to keep it in. And sometimes I thought about the consequences, and sometimes I was reacting so quickly that there was no stop and pause and process and consider the consequences of the choice. That, by the way, is another thing we're going to be bringing into the community. I love it. It's going to be called the high road. And I actually was talking about that with one of my coaching sessions yesterday, because she struggles even in her 60s with not saying the thing. And I said, you know what? Like if you could go to a community and say, I wanted to say this, but I didn't do it. And then everybody's like high-fiving and celebrating, like, then you're going to pause a little bit more. So that's another, like we're building the Sparkler Society around what we need, right?
Yeah, I mean, we truly are. I mean, I'm trying to get back to my authentic self after kind of dimming my light for a while to survive in the tech corporate America that I was in. And that's where I want to be. I mean, that's where I want to be for the rest of my life, right? But I want to get better at um the losing things, and I don't want to leave my children with clutter, and I don't want to leave my children with disorganization. And as I am also that person in the middle, my father, who is 85, and I just spent the night with him the other night, um, the ADHD is getting worse. And I think, I follow a lot of my father's patterns, so I can already see that if I don't start to work on this now, that at 85, I could be physically putting myself in danger, that I can't sit and I'm getting up and I'm moving things, and I've got to move things right now. I've got to go check the mail now. I've got to do this now. He's buzzing around, and there's a lot of opportunities for him to fall and hurt himself. So working on this now at 50 is gonna make my 85 awesome.
Okay, first of all, you're not 50, you're 56.
I'm
I love
56.
you, you lost
Okay.
the 6 years, but it's like, why do you keep saying that? We're gonna take a
I roll
pause.
down. I roll
We're gonna
down. So
well,
so I know there's a little bit more to the story that I think people need to know.
we're gonna come back to it, but remember, Lynn, you wanna not have to go back to the corporate world, not to mention that you're, in the higher side of the 50s, it's gonna be hard for you. So Sparkler Society has to take off. Like we need this. We need this for our livelihoods. We need this for what we're going to contribute to the world. So we're going to pause and take a word from our sponsors. Um, that's a great way to put that in there. And also, again, this is the first time I'm doing a 2-part episode, and I'm hoping that you listen to part 1 so that part 2 makes more sense to you. So I'm just going to ask you that if you like what you're hearing, if you will share it, if you will comment on it, because the world is finally waking up to the fact that ADHD is a real thing. It doesn't go away with age. In fact, there's some people who say it's going to worsen as we age. And so that's why getting this message out now and destigmatizing it so people get the help that they need and the support that they need is important. And unfortunately, there's algorithms, and Lynn, you know about all of this stuff. Like if enough people don't listen to it or don't like it, then no one ever sees it. So anyway, so please like this podcast, share this podcast, comment on this podcast, and then please listen to the commercials you're about to hear, because this is a labor of love. But even love doesn't pay the bills. So we're going to pause and come right back with the rest of Lynn's story. I used to dread visiting my mother. Because of the clutter, the piles, the chaos, we all experience clutter differently. For me, it was a source of anxiety and stress. I'd try to help and she'd get defensive. We were both frustrated and it was destroying our relationship. Then we discovered something that changed everything. My mother had ADHD, and she'd been living with it undiagnosed for over 76 years. Suddenly, it all made sense. The clutter wasn't laziness, the disorganization wasn't a choice. Her brain was wired differently, and no amount of willpower or traditional organizing advice was ever going to work. That discovery became my life's work. It's why I started the Grandma Has ADHD podcast. It's why I became an ADHD coach and specialist. And it's why I am so passionate about helping women like my mother and maybe like you. Because here's what I know: clutter affects us emotionally and physically. It damages relationships, it creates shame spirals, and the overwhelm of not knowing where to start keeps you frozen. But it's okay to ask for help. In fact, it's brave. If you're in the San Diego or Coachella Valley area, my team at Silver Linings Transitions can come to your home. We'll help you tackle the clutter with compassion, not judgment. I also work with women virtually through one-on-one ADHD coaching. And if you are overwhelmed with clutter, I can connect you with trusted resources in your area. Visit jamishapiro.me to get started or grab my book, This Explains So Much, on Amazon. My mother and I got our relationship back. You can get your peace back too. That's JAMISHAPIRO.me. Moving can feel overwhelming, whether you're downsizing, relocating, or helping a loved one transition. There are so many decisions to make, details to handle, and emotions to navigate. At Silver Linings Transitions, we believe every move should be magical, not stressful. We're more than movers. We expertly guide you through the entire process and do our best to alleviate your concerns. From the moment we meet, you'll feel comfortable because we will listen to your needs and wants and work together to create a personalized plan that honors your memories and your cherished belongings while helping you embrace your next chapter. We visit your new space and create a detailed floor plan, ensuring your furniture and treasured belongings will fit safely. We handle the logistics so you don't need to worry about anything, from sorting and packing to coordinating the sale and donation of unwanted items. Our professional team uses efficient, eco-friendly bins and handles every detail with care. We coordinate with our vetted moving partners, oversee the logistics, and ensure nothing is left behind, even packing your refrigerator items. Here's where the magic happens. We don't just unpack. We recreate the feeling of home. Using photos from your previous space, we thoughtfully arrange your furniture, hang your pictures, and set up your kitchen and bathroom so everything feels familiar from day one. When you walk into your new space, it's not just moved in, it's home. Your coffee pot is ready, your favorite photos are perfectly placed, your bed is made, and your new chapter begins with comfort and joy instead of chaos. This is how Silver Linings Transitions makes moves magical. We handle the emotional lifting and the logistics so you can focus on what matters most, settling into your new home. Because every move deserves a silver lining. Hi, I'm Jami Shapiro. I am an ADHD coach and the founder of Silver Linings Transitions, where we do home organizing and move management. And, I did not know that I had ADHD for years. And I remember personally hiring an organizing company to come in and help me because I could just never get it together. And it really wasn't until I understood ADHD and its impact that I realized why. And so I wrote a book, This Explains So Much, Understanding Undiagnosed ADHD, because I just feel like there's so many answers that people don't even know that they're looking for, especially generations of women who grew up thinking that ADHD was just for the hyperactive little boy. It turns out it's not only a body that can be hyperactive, but it can be a mind that's hyperactive. So you can have a wonderful day and you can have something wonderful happen, and then that one negative thing that happens is going to be the thing that takes you into that spiral, and it's going to be keeping you up at night, and you're going to be ruminating on it. And I think that, we as women carry so much shame and so much how it's supposed to be. I'm supposed to have it together. And I remember that was the case for me. I remember, how is it that all of these women have so much consistency and their kids get the sticker charts and everything seems to run well, and I'm the one that's missing parent-teacher conferences and my house, is always in chaos. And then again, that negative self-talk. So my mission is really to educate people who have no idea that ADHD has the impact that it does. And it's to connect you to other people who get it and who will make you feel that you aren't alone, you're not crazy, you're not lazy, you're not stupid, you're not too much. You just have a brain that was wired differently. And I can't wait for you to join me in the community that I'm building, the workshops that I'm creating, the book club that I'm hosting, because I know that I am going to make a profound difference in your life. And we are back, Lynn. We want to kind of complete the rest of this interview. We left people talking about the Sparkler Society, but I want to bring it back to just, what were your thoughts when you heard Kim Holderness suddenly at 49 say, I've had ADHD this whole time?
Well, it was interesting. She looked kind of sad about it, but I was like, welcome. I knew we'd always be best friends. Okay, you can tell she's always been creative. I think I'm very happy that it's starting to come full circle. I'm glad that she kind of announced the way she did. I too am married to an ADHD husband. So who is running this household? Well, she is, and I am. Although I think she probably is doing a better job than I did, but I will say that two ADHD people in the household, the woman thinks I can't possibly have it because everybody in my household thinks I'm holding it together. In fact, my son called me this morning and asked me where his car registration is. I don't even know, Jamie, where my own car registration is, but he assumes that I somehow magically, with my same disorganization as him, know where it is. They really, your ADHD family relies on the mom.
You know what? I'm so glad you brought that. That was something else that I brought up with Dr. Goodman in our podcast. And again, people are going to hear this podcast before they hear that podcast. But I loved that I educated him, because I have done, been doing this podcast now for more than a year, 80, 90 episodes. And I interview people who talk about the impact of having parents with ADHD. And what I've discovered is that if the father has ADHD, there's not as much of an impact on the family as when the mother has ADHD, because the mother is the executive functioning of the house. And she is the one that's, at least in the gender roles that we grew up with, she is the one that has to make sure the house is running well and it's neat and tidy and the kids have done their homework and their grades are good. And that's a reflection on her.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is, one of the reasons that ADHD lands harder for a woman. What he did say is that it tends to be, and this has been my experience, that men struggle more financially. They're not thinking, because of their now and not now time, they're maybe not saving properly. And so they take on the financial burdens of ADHD, not being able to keep jobs, not properly saving for retirement, but the way that the household runs is more the woman. And I also shared with him, and he was like, "Oh, that's a good observation." I said, "Why do you think women are discovering that they have ADHD more and more now?" And I said, and I added to him, and I said, "I think that women are more likely to share their problems with their friends or their issues, any of those issues. And that I've found that, and you're finding this too, that the people that I tend to be closest to also likely have ADHD because we have very similar personalities. And so I'm not too much for you. So when I say, hey, Lynn, I was diagnosed with ADHD, and then you start to hear my story, you're like, oh, wait a minute. So that's the other thing, is that we're opening ourselves up. So we're talking about it, and thankfully, to your point, back to the beginning of the interview, your parents, had the fact that they were willing to take you to a psychologist, back in the early 70s is amazing, because most people wanted to hide their problems, did not want anybody to know that there was an issue, and lived in denial. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and, and then, I think I brought this up before, my dad's philosophy, "Don't chase good money after bad."
Don't
You
throw
know,
good money after bad.
don't throw, chase, I don't know, whichever way he said it, but anyways, um, he at this point, by high school, and I'm still in 5 sports, and I'm still, well, it was about 7th it's about 8th or ninth grade. I'm still ice skating, and ice skating is a very expensive sport, and now my dad has seen a pattern of Lynn is very interested and hyper focused until she's not, right? And now we're chasing a lot of money after ice skating. And where is this ice skating going? And now I'm starting to get a little bit more pushback. Now, I didn't realize at the time that, my dad, at 15, he did a major career change. So obviously, money was on the mind. Like, now I look back and I'm like, oh, he was preparing for a career change, and he has this daughter who's like running through all the money in the house with all the activities and all the ice skating. Ice skating blades cost $500, not the boot, the blade. And I had like 12 pairs of skates. I mean, I'm not bragging. I'm just saying I
Wow.
cost my parents a lot of money with my personal interests. And now, we're obviously going through some sort of career change. So, now they're saying, okay, are you really that interested? Right? Now they're starting to push back on, is this a fad? Are you really that interesting? And what's so funny is Jamie and I have this discussion all the time, that all of a sudden I'll be sitting here and I haven't talked to Jamie for 2 days. And I'll be like, she's not as into the Sparkler Society as I am. I am into the Sparkler. I'm living the Sparkler Society. And she's like, I'm running a business too. And I'm like, no, I need to know that you are in as much as I am in, but we are in. I think this is our future and our hyper focus. But every now and then I just have to check in with you, because I'm like so worried that like you've thought of something else new. And but
Well, I'm always thinking of new things, but the difference between those things and this is, I truly believe this is my why. This is my purpose for being here. And I would
right.
never have gotten to this if I hadn't, started Silver Linings Transitions. And I will also say, that is my senior move management company. I'm going to plug it in San Diego. And I have an amazing team now of people who, keep it going and who help our clients. And where I come in is, obviously strategy. And if we do have clients that we think might maybe have ADHD, again, we're not diagnosing, but when we see patterns, me getting involved in the situation and helping everybody to understand the support that that person needs, which may be different than just a typical, person that we're helping through the move. But
Yeah.
anyway,
So
I'm just to say I'm not losing interest, but I have a team of people who rely on a solid, stable paycheck to feed their family and keep their lights on. And so I cannot abandon them. And that's when we become a grown up, is when we have to say, yes, this is my hyper focus, but I have people who are relying on me. So that
Yeah,
is my balance. And
yeah,
I'll, by the way, I'm also rewriting the second version of the book, which I'm excited. It's this explains so much to TOO, because I'm adding the Sparkler Society into that. I'm adding, when you host a podcast and coach, you learn more. And, I've attended 2 conferences since I wrote the last book. So I have to add, like, there's just more to
yeah.
add.
No,
And
no,
then
I
I'm
get it. I
also,
get it. Again, we're feeding energy off each other. So if there are
yeah. And
days you don't have
wait,
energy, I've got the energy and vice versa.
I have one more thing. So
Okay.
a lot of people, and you tell me if you're, a lot of people struggle to read a book with ADHD. They will look at the page 3 times, and they just cannot absorb it because their mind just keeps wandering. So a lot of people have said, I wanna read your book, but until you put it out in an audio version, I'm not going to have the bandwidth. So I don't want to record the audio until the book feels like it's closer to what I want it to be. So, Lynn, I love you. I'm committed to the Sparkler Society. I'm committed to everybody who's going to benefit from it, but I'm spread thin.
You are. And I mean, that's kind of where um your partner, your spouse, your children, my husband will be like, okay, Lynn, you're doing improv, stand up, you had a full-time job, you got the kids, you know what I mean? Like occasionally I need a sounding board of somebody to be like, um, you know, wow, that's a lot. I think my dad enforcing that you get 3 sports. We're done with the 5, you get 3. He wanted to coach one, so he was really hoping I'd picked a sport that he could coach because he wanted to be involved. He was one of those dads, which is also awesome. So I picked softball so he could coach softball, but ice skating. And ice skating counted as 2 because it was really expensive. But that did show me that you can't do everything. You do have to make those choices. And when I chose to go away to college, given that my academic career was not the best, I know that that was another moment that my dad probably thought, and here we go. We're just writing the check out. And, she's going to go to a couple of football games. She's going to meet a bunch of people. And, we're going to be moving her stuff out before the spring semester. I mean, he probably was thinking it all sounds good until she gets to finals, until she gets to projects, until she gets to things where she has to deliver. So he very much told me, if you give up on this, you will pay me back.
I love that. And spoiler alert, Lynn graduated from the University of Florida. That's where we met, in the College
Yeah.
of Journalism and
As a
Communication.
C student.
Oh,
You're
you
the
don't
A
want to hear
student.
You don't want to hear that I was highest honors, but actually that brings up a really good point, and I want to kind of wrap this up. But
Yeah.
ADHD, a lot of people think it's poor parenting. Like if you would have better parents, you wouldn't have ADHD. And I just want to highlight, Lynn and I are about as opposite as you can be coming into this story. Lynn had married parents. She was raised Catholic. She's a conservative Republican. I am Jewish. I did not have a stable childhood. I am not a Republican. I live in California now, lived in Jacksonville as well. Like we are opposite. And it just goes to show that it is not poor parenting, that ADHD, and I will also say one of the things that I've heard is, yes, we have more incidents of issues with attention because we have kids who've got phones in their hands all the time. They're not getting proper exercise. They're not outside. So 100%, we definitely have an environmental situation, causing more attention deficit issues.
Mhm.
But we have ADHD because we were born this way, not because of the environment. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that for anybody that's like, and so if you're feeling shame, um, that's like saying I feel shame because I was born deaf, or I can't see. Like it's the same. It's like my
It
mom. I
is.
used to
It
be very
is.
anti-meds. So when I have had periods of my life where I needed probably some boosts, like when I was going through cancer and refused to take anything for my anxiety, and my mom would say, Jamie, take something, take something. And I absolutely would not. And it was because of my own anxiety. I didn't want to put anything into my body. But she said, Jamie, if you needed insulin because for diabetes, would you take it? Yes. If you needed medicine for your blood pressure, would you take it? Yes. We need to start looking at ADHD. We have a brain wiring difference. We do not process dopamine the same way, and that causes all sorts of impacts across many, many areas of our life. But it is nothing to be ashamed about. So, anyway, do you have anything
Well,
else that you
to
want to
conclude
say?
I would, on that note of medication you bring up, to conclude my story in a very succinct way, we were both at University of Florida, and the worst of all worst, situations happened, that I
Mhm,
happened to be living in an apartment across from where the serial killer, apartment complex, where the serial killer that came to Gainesville, killed multiple people. Jamie and I also fit the profile of what the serial killer was looking for to kill. And
mhm.
at the time, I am working at a radio station where I have to get to the radio station at 4 in the morning. So I must leave my apartment and get to that microphone at 5 a.m. in the morning in the dark, on campus, from off campus to on campus, basically going through what I would consider, serial killer alley, or, whatever. And that is when, I mean, the anxiety shot back to my kindergarten years.
Of
And
course, though, but that's a very, very, very
right,
valid
right.
reason.
And
We
so
all had
I
anxiety. Even
yeah,
people that didn't have ADHD or anxiety disorder before had anxiety because, it isn't common that you have a serial killer on your college campus.
yeah. So I did what I knew what to do, which was to reach out for therapy, and they did prescribe medication. And I did take it because, again, I had learned that if I earned some small wins, if I had a couple of good nights sleep of taking that medication, and I started to regain my control over my thoughts of what if, because I started to see some success. And then, my mother drove into town after I told her that, I went through the college and went to a therapist in the college, and I was taking this medication. She drove into town because her concern was that she wanted to make sure the medication was at the right level, because she was like, "I don't want it to dull your shine." So she came in, she took me out to lunch, and at the time, I was on a very extreme high dose. And she asked me to tell her what was going on in my life, which would normally be like, I'm dating this guy and that guy, and oh my God, mom, mom, mom. But instead, it was a very dull story. It had no peaks and valleys. It was very monotone. And then she told me to show her the medications and showed her the milligrams. She called a few doctors in Jacksonville, and they were like, it's too high for her. And so then they reduced it, and then they reduced it again to only those nights where, like, it was crippling fear. And then I just only took it those nights. And then eventually, like, when my prescription came up, I was like, I had those small wins, and I was like, I don't need it anymore. But the methodology had changed, and the medication was, given to me within like one visit. It had obviously become acceptable to take like the pain level down to get the wins, and then to kind of tweak from there. So
Mhm.
I see where it can be really useful, and then I also see where, you have to keep evaluating and adjusting. You may have to evaluate and adjust. So that is the end. Well, it's never an ending story, but that is the misdiagnosis and the therapy, kind of leading up to, where we are now, in the acceptance and surrounding yourself with other friends that get you. I don't
Mhm.
know. I think that's the best way that I could say it, is that now we can talk about it. Now, Jamie, when you come into town, it's awesome because when you start talking to people, um, because of all the research and stuff that you've done, you feel very comfortable saying to somebody, "Hey, have you ever considered that you may have ADHD?" I am not there yet because I want someone to tell me first, and then I'm like, "Oh, be my friend." But I, because 'cause I'm not there yet, and I also feel like, I still have so much to learn, so I consider myself to be sort of the average community member of the Sparkler Society, and then, we're all going to kind of, like, learn and evolve together, so there's still so much, I know there's still so much you don't know, but there's still so much in my journey that I am not, like, I know when I like somebody and I don't know why I like somebody. Pretty much I can tell you that's probably the reason why I like them is because they can handle my energy, and I can get energy from them. I do have some introverted friends that I just love because their quietness. I like to try to learn from them too on the quietness that they can be comfortable with, but I can't all the time be with them because at some point I feel like I'm performing and I'm the class clown and I'm not getting my energy back. You know what I'm saying?
I know
So,
exactly. I know exactly what you're saying.
yeah.
And I think, you and I could keep going and going and going and going.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't want to lose our audience.
Yeah.
There definitely will be more of the two of us together, and there, of course, more in the Sparkler Society, which is coming. We're going to be, actually, by the time this releases, we're going to have our first gathering to really join people on the wait list, and make sure that we are building exactly what they want and need. So again, go to Jami Shapiro, Jami Shapiro, SHAPIRO.me, and find the Sparkler Society, where you can find the wait list. Lynn, I love that you've always been that friend that was, however much you were, I was always just a little less. So it was comfortable for me because, again, we both share that allotness. And I'm so glad that you're starting to understand yourself better, that the world is seeing more and more and more people come forward and say, I have this, and just because I'm smart or successful or was able to have good grades or keep a good home, it doesn't mean that I haven't been compensating behind the scenes, working more, harder than anybody else to look like I have my shit together.
Mm.
So anyway, if so, as I always like to end the podcast, do you think you could do it this time? Because I've asked you before, I've teed it up, and then you don't get it.
You forget that I forget all the taglines.
Okay. I'll tell you then, because I understand how your brain works, and, it's not your thing, it's mine. But this podcast is all about helping you understand that it is never too late to understand yourself better, and make the rest of your life the
For
what,
the
Lynn?
rest of your life.
Thanks so much for listening. The opinions expressed on Grandma Has ADHD podcast are those of our guests and hosts and are intended for informational and entertainment purposes only. This podcast does not provide medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The content discussed in this episode is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician, mental health professional, or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or mental health concern. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or emergency services immediately. The hosts, guests, and producers of Grandma Has ADHD do not assume any liability for the content of this podcast. Listen at your own discretion.